Hi everyone, I'm Maggie Moon, the Global Village Witch. Thank you so very much for joining me today for day 18, Create a Servitor. So what is a Servitor? Well, basically a Servitor is something that you create to carry out your will. It is created from you and the elements that you pour into it, and then you give it a mission to carry out. I create a servitor instead of summoning demons or angels to carry out your bidding, because there are some things that can be accomplished with a servitor, a creation that you manifest to achieve this, rather than contacting the higher beings to do these things. And servitors can be short-lived or they can be ongoing, depending on what their mission is. And that's what you will decide. Now, there's no need to overcomplicate the process of making a servitor unless you enjoy it. Okay, there are rituals that can be performed, or it could be a little bit less on the ritualistic side, but there does have to be some element of ritual in there to create that and to align yourself on all levels of your being with the working, so that you can have successful magic. Now, you may hear stories about servitors that have gone awry and things went crazy. Well, let's talk about that realistically for a minute. It depends what the magician or the witch or the creator, let's just say, they did, how they handled the whole process. So if you're listening to me now, if you're a responsible adult that will take this seriously, then I invite you to keep watching. Because if you take this seriously and you're respectful in your approach, then you will achieve success. And you don't have to worry. You have to remember that your servitor is an extension of you. So just think about that for a second. And as long as you continue to maintain it properly and work with it, there will not be any issues. It's perhaps when we create different types of servitors, and if we're not very careful with our wording or our intention, and our emotions are all over the place, and we ourselves are not coming from a balanced place, then perhaps. But I think a lot of these stories that we hear are rare occurrences, and some of them are likely very over-exaggerated in more of a projection of the person who is telling the story, of their imagination, than what actually happened. So with that said, your servitor should be thought of as a living being, okay? And you will respect your servitor, okay? You will treat it as a living being. You will not ever be rude or disrespectful to your servitor, because that's not a good idea. You want to be respectful but authoritative with it, not overly bossy, just authoritative and very respectful. And you should see success. Now, when you're creating your servitor, you can create one more like an astral servitor, and with it all being done with a sigil and your intent. Or you can follow the process where you have a physical object that you use in the creation of the servitor. It can be a statue, a poppet, a a rock, a piece of wood, you know, something that you found in nature, etc. Okay, you can use that, and some people keep that physical representation of their servitor and, you know, feed it. And how you choose to go about that, those parts are completely up to you. All of it is up to you. This is just my take on it, my opinion, and my experience. So the first thing you'll need is to have a need to create a servitor. Once you decide that this is the right way to go about working your magic, okay, you're going to start the planning stages. Okay, what is the purpose going to be for this servitor? What do you want it to accomplish for you? Okay, so you'll think about the entire vision of the servitor. You're going to think about its mission while it's alive, how long you'll want it around, what is it going to be called, what is it going to look like, okay, and what is it going to feed off of, okay? So this can change over time. Like as you start like recording, you'll want to take notes and plan this out because it's an important thing that you're doing. Planning out a servitor can be kind of quick if you're familiar with what you want and if you have experience, but ideally you should remember that you can never rush magic. So if you need something quick, you can start another spell and use the servitor in addition to, okay, or plan it out that you'll have enough time to do the whole process. Where is the servitor going to live? You want to perhaps consider creating something that is called the fatal flaw, so that if anything does go wrong, if you feel like the servitor isn't responding to you or isn't fulfilling its purpose or anything, it's good to build in a fail-safe switch in a way, and this will be the fatal flaw, and you will mention it as you're creating the servitor. And you'll include that in your list when you're planning out your servitor. And make the fail-safe, the fatal flaw, something that you're not going to think of while working with the servitor. It's not something that you think of easily. So something like a mixture of things that you have to either say and project or physically combine, like let's say rose water, vinegar, and salt, things that you don't normally use together. That will be the fatal flaw, and that will make it immediately cease to exist. If it's a servitor that you want it to be ongoing, you're going to keep it around, and you'll want to have perhaps a sigil or something, some words that you create that can put it into hibernation sometimes if you want to not be using its services for a while. And you know, it is even possible to create servitors that you're not even going to use right away, okay, but for different purposes, and then have them sleep until they're further called upon, okay? The next step is the creation of the servitor. The conception of the servitor, the creation of the servitor, and the gestation of the servitor. You'll want to make a name for your servitor, and ideally the name is not going to be something that is common. So you can use it based on perhaps numerology, or meditate and hear a name, or combining different letters from what its mission is, or whatever, okay? But you'll want it to be an odd name that is not very common. And you can use part of its name or part of the letters in Theban or whatever when you're creating the sigil for the servitor. And for the appearance as well, you'll probably not want it to look like the regular things, you know, like a human, or if you probably don't want to choose that. You may want to choose maybe even like an airy version perhaps of something that could be a humanoid, depending on the purpose of the servitor. It can be an animal but with different characteristics, like perhaps odd colored fur or eyes that, you know, are silver glowing or gold or whatever. Be creative with your servitor. Okay, it's yours and you want it to represent your purpose. People like to name their servitors after its form, qualities, or purpose. Other people prefer to use non-English words or different letters at random. But don't base it off of something that already exists. That wouldn't be helpful. It'll just be confusing. Okay? Keep the name of your servitor secret, okay? Unless you create a group servitor. Some people who create a physical representation of their servitor or use something physical will sometimes use physical items such as wine or some of their own blood maybe. Let's say you create a servitor to increase the sales of a product. You can say that the servitor can feed off of the energy of every sale, okay? But in addition to that, you will take some time, daily, weekly, whatever you think is best for your servitor, and you will take a moment to feel that gratitude for its accomplishments, okay? But never threaten it. I'll only feed you if you know, nothing like that, okay? There's no need. But once it is happening and working, because it will happen and work, because you're a badass witch that can generate change in your life, imagine that gratitude, feel it, and say, this gratitude that I'm feeling right now, feast upon it. Okay? You can do that daily, weekly, monthly, depending. Like I said, they don't need a lot, but you'll want to feed it enough so that it'll be strong enough to accomplish the goal. The location of your servitor. Where is your servitor going to live? Okay? Well, there are many places that you can choose. Like I said, a rock or a statue or a bottle, anything like that, okay? Or just on the astral completely. Some people do that. Or you can house it on yourself. It is an extension of you, an extension of your will. So you can house it perhaps in your hair. I wouldn't necessarily house it in anywhere where my energy centers are. That's just me. But let's say I have a servitor to help me with sales or to be more confident or something like that. I can house it on the tip of my tongue. More about the fatal flaw. When creating your servitor, you make it vulnerable to a combination of imagined elements, okay? You are unlikely to ever need to use the fatal flaw. I think this is something that's good for people that are especially new, perhaps with this form of magic, to have, because it'll ease them. And once you're eased, you're more at ease and you're more confident in your magic, the greater the success, okay? The greater chance of success. If you're doubting it or if you're worried, you're listening to the horror stories that you may have heard that are mostly exaggerated, and if anything, very rare with extreme circumstances. Because really, servitors, if they're not fed, if they're not given acknowledgement or whatever, they tend to just fade away. Okay, that's what happens. They don't, like, you hear stories of servitors that'll start like finding their own energy source and like wreaking havoc upon the world. And I'm not saying that this is impossible, but there has to be a lot of combined factors involved, okay? It's not normally the way that it goes. Next, you'll want to create a sigil. So the sigil can be anything. So let's just say I want to use like some of the letters of a servitor. So let's say there's the letter O and the letter F in there, maybe even a letter T. You know, you can create even a basic sigil like this if you're comfortable. If you wish to, you can, you know, draw a circle around it. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. Okay, so this or anything that you choose can be the sigil that will represent your servitor. But this is not a visual representation of your servitor. This isn't what your servitor looks like. It's like your servitor's logo, basically, like sigils we've discussed previously. Some people like to create their sigil after they create their servitor. I like to use it more as like an egg. And use the sigil for part of the birthing process of the servitor. Okay, so the next step would be creation. The act of creation is the stage where you will take all of the work that you have been thinking of and brainstorming and maybe doing sketches of how it works, like how it's going to look. You've decided upon the special powers that your servitor is going to have, what it's going to feed off of, what its mission is, how long it's going to live, and things like that. Okay? Conception is achieved through the act of writing out the statement about the servitor. Okay? You'll want to write that all out, and it is written to the servitor, so not about it, but to it. So instead of saying fictional servitor is a spirit of great power, you are a spirit of great power. Okay? As you write everything, it is addressed to the spirit as though it already exists. Okay? And you're merely describing it in detail. So an example would be something like, first you'll write the name of the servitor, followed by the purpose, the appearance, the power, the timing, how long it's going to live, if it's going to live a week, will it cease to exist after it completes a certain task, will it be ongoing, so it'll live until such a time that you call it to rest, you call it to cease to exist after it's fulfilled its duty. You'll include the fatal flaw in there. You'll include its name and the sorts of sustenance, what it's going to feed off of, where it's going to live. Okay? And then finally draw the servitor's sigil at the base of this paragraph. So you could say something like, and I'm actually reading this part from Magical Servitors, Create Your Own Spirits to Attract Pleasure, Power, and Prosperity. So an example might look something like this. You are fictional servitor, I'll say, a spirit of great cunning and power. Fictional servitor, you are a black dog the size of a lion, with silvered eyes and a warm, rumbling growl, and you breathe out smoke of burnt leaves. Fictional servitor, it is your purpose to give my voice the power of persuasion. When I call on you, fictional servitor, and the name of the one that I wish to convince, You make my voice lull and soothe my target into a dreaming state of acceptance. You continue to work this magic long after my conversation ends, so that my words linger in the mind and heart of the one I want to persuade. You will live until I call you to your death, and upon hearing that call, you will willingly dissipate. Fictitional servitor, you come to me immediately when I speak your name, okay? When called, you will obey my commands and go into the world and do my bidding. You are fed by my gratitude and by the pleasure I take in the success that you bring. Fictitional servitor, you are housed in the tip of my tongue. You will be reduced to nothing if you are touched by a blend of rosewater, salt, and blood while hearing the name, whatever that fail-safe name is, okay? You can create whatever it is. Fictitional servitor, this is your sigil. And then you would draw the sigil beneath the text. And it's not stipulated in your instructions to the servitor, but when you do call your servitor, it's always a good idea to call it 3 times. You're instructing your servitor and telling it that it's going to come when you call its name. It doesn't matter that you do it more than once, but we do it more than once just to be sure that it'll hear us, okay? We want to send it out. So you'll write everything in a firm tone, okay? Like the statement, you will obey my commands. Because you never want to praise the servitor. You can give it gratitude and respect, and you can feed it what you say you're going to feed it. But if you start making it above you, then you are its subordinate, okay? And you don't want that to happen. Remember, here you're not constructing a ritual to call upon demons or angels, okay? But you are forging a life that is going to respond to you. It lives for your purpose, and it comes from you. So trust your intuition and create this servitor accordingly, okay? And you know, you are bringing about this creation. So make sure you define the process of its life through the words that you write, okay? As long as it's meaningful to you, because if it's meaningful to you, it's going to be meaningful to your servitor because it is created from you. Just remember that, okay? Trust yourself to know. So it's important to keep a record of your servitor, the creation, so that if you ever need to know anything at a later date to refresh your memory, it is there, okay? So the servitor can be brought into existence within a few minutes after that if you need to, but again, this is not really recommended. You want to give it some time to have a proper gestation period, okay? Gestation, all you do really is remain aware of your servitor, just like you would be if you were expecting, you know, a child. You would be aware that it's coming, okay? You would be aware that it is alive in the same way that something that is waiting to be born is alive. Okay, so you can spread this process over a week or however long that you think is appropriate, okay? And you think about it now and then, okay? Remaining aware of its existence. Ensure that when you think of it, you consider its name, appearance, and location. You consider these things right now more than anything, okay? Later on, you can worry about its purpose, etc. Right now, when you think about it, you think of the name, its location, and what it looks like, okay? Those are the important factors at this stage. When you give life to your servitor, okay, there's different ways that people do this. This is just one of the ways that I've used this magic. You become aware that your servitor is about to be born. In yourself, inside of you, that you are, okay, the multiverse within you. You are a source of creation. Okay, you are the multiverse, that darkness. And then you imagine that same imagery for your servitor. At this stage, you're going to read through your written statement that you've made during the conception stage. So you'll want to read this out loud, and then you're going to read it again mentally, okay? And then maybe even one more time out loud, okay? Picture your servitor in its dormant state as best as you can, and picture it with its eyes closed if possible. Now, if your visualization skills aren't that strong, don't worry, that's fine. Just know that this is what it's looking like right now, okay? Know it, believe it, don't doubt it, okay? Then, after you're done reading through your statement, okay, there's a visualization that very much akin to the Kabbalistic cross of light, but that light is coming from within you, so you can draw it down into you, but it's being housed now. This brilliant light is in your heart chakra and your throat chakra, okay? And it's filling you up, and you breathe that light out onto either the sigil or the poppet or whatever you're using to create your servitor, okay? And then you will say the servitor's name out loud 3 times. And as you do this, its eyes blink open and it is alive, okay? Again, if your visualization is not that great, don't worry. Just know and believe this is what is happening. The birth is complete. Your servitor is alive. It sees you. You see it. You're aware of each other now. Okay? It is something separate other than you. Outside of you now. Okay? And while your servitor stands before you, filled with a new life, you can now move on to its living purpose. Okay? Now, a traditional approach that I use, the more traditional approach, which I also recommend, okay, is you would use, so you would have the sigil of the servitor in a circle before you with representations of each of the elements. And if you're not a very strong person with the visualizations, this might be better for you because it's physical, like you can see these representations, okay? So you would have earth, air, water, fire, along with the 5th element being spirit, but that would be from you, that light that you breathe into your servitor, either into the poppet or the sigil, okay? And then the same thing, once you breathe, you read your list 3 times, its eyes open. There you have it. And after birth, you can give your servitor its first instructions and let it begin working for you. Okay. Instructions are vital. If you've created a servitor to bind enemies or things like that, it will need to be instructed directly on what to do every single time you want it to bind an enemy. Some servitors will not be required immediately. If you've created a servitor for future use after the birth, you should call the servitor, acknowledge its existence, and give it permission to go into hibernation until you call upon it, okay? So here, you would either do the hibernation stage or have your servitor ongoing, or you have stipulated that after this goal is accomplished, it will dissipate, okay? Or when you say certain words, it will dissipate. In other situations, you may think that you've created a servitor that you want to keep around for an ongoing period of time, but you decide against it. You don't need it anymore. And rather than just letting it starve to death by ignoring it or its existence, okay? All you have to do is call the servitor, thank it for all the work that it has done, tell it that it has fulfilled its destiny, offer it your gratitude and tell it it is now time, its existence is completed, and it is now dissipating, and that is that. Okay, so sometimes people have the time is up with their servitor, so either their servitor has dissipated and based on the condition after this task is accomplished, but some people sometimes still feel attached to their servitor. They still think that maybe they see it or feel it. Sometimes this is normal. I mean, you've been aware of this being that you created for however amount of time. So sometimes it's normal to just kind of feel that. But if you keep feeling it over an extended amount of time and you feel that maybe it didn't actually dissipate, then you would use the fail switch that you put in there just as a caution. But you probably won't need that. I'm just saying that to put your mind at ease, and if ever you're feeling that it may still be around, again, to put your mind at ease, to make sure that it's, you know, it's now done. Your servitor is no longer in existence, because you'll pull that fail switch. Okay, so Dawn from Dawn Nightbloom is actually doing a servitor series, and her hashtag 31 days of magic for this challenge, she talks about her servitor and has a little altar box for it, and it's quite impressive to watch. So you'll probably want to head over to her channel and check out the series and check out her video on that, because she did a great job. And I'm sure if you put in 31 Days of Magic into YouTube, you'll see all of the wonderful practitioners who have contributed to this as well. I wish you much love and blessings, and know that I appreciate each and every one of you. See you next time.